let's move to China, because that is the real and primary global challenge, it seems to me. We also made decisions in the 90s and early 2000s that proved to be quite fateful for the future of the world. Tell us your understanding of those decisions and why, in fact, they turned out to have been, maybe the word comes to my mind is utopian, but maybe you have a less pejorative word for it.
Well, I actually have a more pejorative word, which is remarkably foolish.
Okay. Dumb.
Dumb.
Dumb. So take us back to those glorious moments when, again, I remember arguments we were having at the New Republic where I was on the wrong side. I thought that economic growth in such a vibrant and talented population would almost certainly lead to a thriving middle class, and that we would then become, China would then move towards liberal democracy, blah, 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 blah. And others said to me at the time, actually, due props, Leon Wieseltier, my old ex-friend, said, no, this completely misunderstands reality. That there's no reason why the Chinese Communist government would not use this economic growth to entrench its authoritarianism, to entrench its control of the society. And that this sort of Whiggish notion that everything is moving in history, this Hegelian bullshit that somehow everything's going to end everywhere the same, is a delusion. And I think I'm look back now and I'm happy to say that I was completely overly optimistic about that. But at the time, when we had seen China under Deng Xiaoping definitely reform itself to a great extent, to be more open, that we wanted to encourage that process. And we thought by engaging, by granting them most favored nation status, by then bringing them into the WTO, the early 2000s, this would all be just a wonderful integration of China into the liberal democratic world, right? That was the argument. Why were we wrong?
It's just important to emphasize that there's sort of two steps in the argument that you're making. The first step is that by integrating China into the liberal international economy, embedding it in institutions, it would then become a thriving liberal democracy. That's the first step, which you described. The second step is that we would all then live happily ever after. In other words, if China had become rich, prosperous, and democratic, it would be a world of peace, love, and dope. That's the argument. For me, even if it became a liberal democracy, the United States and China would still be at each other's throats, right? So it's just important to understand that there are those two dimensions. We never got to the second step. So the debate is all about the first step. China was an economically backward country in 1990. It had 1/75th the per capita GNP of the United States. It was a backward country. And what we decided to do in the early 1990s was to help China grow rich on the assumption that it would become a democracy and we would live happily ever after. Well, China grew rich. It is now a remarkably wealthy country compared to what it was in 1990. And furthermore, there are a lot of Chinese people. They have many more people than the United States. And the two principal building blocks of power in international relations are population size and wealth. So when you take a country that has, almost 4 times as many people as the United States, and you make it really wealthy, you're creating a country that is going to be more powerful than you are. So what has happened is the United States created a peer competitor. This is probably the greatest strategic blunder in modern history.